First of all, I just want to welcome everyone to our first presentation in our series of legal stuff that you should know as an international student. We welcome you here and we're really excited to have you. My name is Molly Phillips. I am one of the staff attorneys over at Student Legal Services. Is everyone aware of our office and what we do? No? I'm seeing some no's. Okay, good. Well, we'll talk a little bit about our office today, as well as discuss some topics relating to consumer rights and landlord-tenant rights as someone who is, living here in the United States. So just a little bit of background before we jump into kind of the substance of our presentation about our office and what we do. Our office is located over in the South Campus Gateway. We do have 5 full-time attorneys on staff, and we provide legal advice, representation, and education to all students who are eligible for our services who are enrolled full-time at Ohio State on main campus, okay? We've been in existence since 2011, and as you can see, we're becoming more popular as people realize that our office exists and the types of resources that we can provide to you. Some of the things that we commonly encounter with people who have never been to our office before are just kind of an understanding of who we are. We are not a university office, so that's one thing that people sometimes like to hear because we don't share our records with the university. We are bound by the attorney-client privilege just like we would be if we were working in a law firm downtown. Everything that you come and talk to an attorney about is going to be completely confidential. And so we want to make sure that everybody knows that, so that if you do have any concerns about what it is that you're coming to talk to us about, you should be very assured that we take those confidentiality obligations extremely seriously in our office. We love talking to international students. Even though international students take up, maybe 8 to 9% of the population here at OSU, you represent 14% of our representation of OSU students, which means, we're seeing international students a lot, which makes me believe that, there is a lot of information that we could be sharing with you, maybe to avoid some of those visits. But certainly, we want to make sure that everyone has access to our services and knows where we are. Yeah, you can go ahead. Okay, so the question that I oftentimes get is, do students really need lawyers? I mean, is it really that necessary? And part of the presentation today is yes, you do. I mean, there are lots of legal issues that students face. Just because you're young potentially, or you don't have significant assets or things like that. I mean, there are many reasons why you might have to actually talk to a lawyer. The biggest thing that in addition to our confidentiality obligations that I really hope to convey to you today is, really there is no judgment in our office whatsoever. I mean, we have seen everything. And when I say that, I mean, we have seen everything. And really there are no silly questions. And so one of the things that I see in meeting with international students sometimes is I'll sit down with someone and they'll say, well, I'm interested in buying a car, and we're going to have another presentation about that. So if you're interested in that, we'll talk about that in a little bit. They'll say, but I just don't really know what to do, and I feel really silly talking to someone about it. Well, please don't be worried about things like that, because I studied abroad and I totally understand where you are, because there are lots of things that may be really intuitive to people who live here. Our office is a great place to kind of run and those ideas off of if you want to do that in a confidential setting, okay? Okay, so some of the areas that we can represent students on are landlord-tenant issues. So does anyone live off campus? Yeah? Anyone thinking about living off campus at any point while they're living here? Maybe? Okay. So for those of you who are living off campus, hopefully your off-campus living situation has been stellar and you've had absolutely no issues with your landlord up until this point. That is kind of the exception. We do see students for a lot of landlord-tenant issues, and in fact, it makes up almost 40% of our representation of Ohio State students. So, we can assist in helping you deal with picking out a lease, signing a lease agreement, reviewing the terms of your lease agreement. If you're having maintenance issues, so if your landlord is not responding to maintenance requests or taking care of problems that exist at the property and he's not addressing them, we can assist you with that. If you are concerned that you are the victim of any sort of housing discrimination, we can help you with that. If you have any issues in getting your security deposit back at the end of a lease term, we can assist you with that, okay? So there are a whole array of services that we provide in the landlord-tenant arena. We're gonna talk today about lease negotiation and signing a lease and moving off campus. But if you have anything specific and you don't want to talk to me today afterwards, then I do encourage you to make a follow-up appointment because it's very likely something that we would be able to help you with, okay? We also offer criminal and traffic services. So does anyone drive? Does anyone have a car and drive? Yeah, okay, several of you. So let's say you get a speeding ticket and you're here in Franklin County. You would very likely receive a ticket that would contain some sort of a summons that you would need to come to court, okay? In those situations, we can represent students in dealing with the prosecutor, walking you through the process, making you feel at ease about the process, and what you should expect to encounter in the event you ever need to go to court. Hopefully, you don't ever have to face any criminal charges while you're here. However, it happens. We represent students with a variety of criminal misdemeanors. The biggest restriction is that it does have to be a misdemeanor level offense, which is a less serious offense than a felony here in the state of Ohio, okay? But otherwise, we are able to represent you. So, lots of times, we see students a lot after the fact. Let's say they got picked up for driving under the influence or something, which is considered to be a pretty serious misdemeanor here in the state of Ohio. And I mean, you could pay a private attorney $5,000 to represent you in a case like that very easily. And that is something that our office can handle. So, you want to make sure that before you ever kind of go down that path of hiring a private attorney, it's at least worth it to give us a call and see if it's something that we can offer to you, because we can probably save you a lot of money in the process, okay? All right. In addition to the landlord tenant and the criminal cases that we handle, we have this kind of bucket that we call other civil. It's not really a great descriptor, except to say that we provide a ton of legal services that don't fall into those other two categories. So if there is something that comes up, so for instance, let's say you have a debt collection issue, and Mandy's going to talk a little bit about finances and things like that, but let's say that you are receiving phone calls from a debt collector, and it's for a debt that you have no idea what it relates to. They have a mistaken identity or something like that. We can help you with that. If you have a consumer-related issue, we're going to talk about consumer protections here today, then we can help you with that. We can assist international students with drafting, powers of attorney, so that you can appoint someone to manage your business affairs or your health care in the event something happens to you while you're here. I've actually had situations with international students where that would have been really helpful, if somebody had those types of documents in place. We can assist you with that type of stuff as well. So, I like to tell people we are a fully functioning legal, like a law office, a law firm. We provide, it's a general practice. We provide almost the full gamut of legal services. So it's certainly worth a phone call to check out to see whether or not it's something we can provide before you do incur any costs. Okay, so the first topic that we're going to talk about tonight is housing. And certainly the biggest issue in any sort of housing situation that you're going to enter into is your contractual agreement or your lease agreement with your landlord. Okay, so you should have received, I think we are passing out the folders of information that are provided by our office. If not, there are additional copies up here. Feel free to grab one or grab one on the way out. That folder is information that's put together by our office, and it's the information that's provided to students when they come into our office for a lease review. So it contains the OffCampus Living Guide that's put together by the union, and that contains just really good general information about living off campus. It also has some informational packets that are created by our office, as well as a draft roommate contract, which we'll talk about here in a moment. We certainly encourage you to come and have a lease review with one of our attorneys before you decide whether or not to sign a lease agreement with someone in the upcoming year. Is anyone still looking for an apartment for next year? Yeah, a couple people? Great. Okay. So, if you are eligible for our services, otherwise you can come in and sit down with an attorney and have a full 45-minute session where we can go through your lease item by item and we can make sure that everything looks okay and you understand it, okay? But this will just have some general information that will be helpful, hopefully, and while you're looking for properties, okay? So one of the biggest issues in lease agreements here on campus, but really generally here in the Columbus area, it's really important to know that if you plan to take a roommate, that most leases in this area it's joint and several liability. What that means is that each roommate that signs the contract is going to be responsible for the full amount of the rent if the other roommate does not pay their portion of the rent, okay? So that's really important because students, they are trusting by nature, and we see people to get into situations where they're living with people that they don't know very well, they don't know their financial situation, and then if that person just leaves, in the middle of the school year or something like that, and especially if that person is not someone who's living locally, then you're really in a bind, because your landlord can either evict you or you're going to have to come up with that other person's portion of the rent. And so then you might have to take on a roommate that you don't want to live with, or whatever the case may be. It can be very, very stressful. So this joint and several liability issue is really important in determining where you want to live, okay? Because first of all, there are big risks associated with moving into a house with 15 people and you don't know any of the other people, okay? Because you don't know what any of those people are going to do, okay? And the landlord might know that you're a really good person, and so he might come after you to try and get the rent money if you have someone who's not living up to their obligations under the lease, okay? Really, the best thing that you can do in dealing with this joint and several liability issue is to make sure that you know as much as you can about your roommates. I mean, nobody can insure against all risks. We are lawyers, we try and manage risks as much as we can, but the reality is some risks just are things that you can't stop, and the best you can do is just try and get a lot of information from them. How do you plan to pay for your rent? Is it, is your family providing that money? Are you planning to get that from private loans? How are you paying for your living situation? So that you have some assurances that this person is going to actually be able to cover all of the costs that are associated with living in the apartment. It's also important, not just from a financial perspective, but to know this person's personality. Because not only are you responsible for the rent if that person doesn't pay their portion of the rent, but let's just say they're terrible at maintaining the property. They don't clean, they break stuff, they're not doing their job to maintain the property itself. That liability is going to be shared between the two of you. It's not going to be apportioned to one person or another, okay? So that concept of joint and several liability is really important. Budgeting. So, oftentimes I hear students say it's cheaper to live off campus, and that may or may not be the case. It really is important. Mandy's going to talk to you a little bit more about this in detail, that you get a really good estimate of what your financial picture is going to look like when you live off campus. One of the things that I always encourage students to do, sometimes they do it and sometimes they don't, is to knock on the door of the place where they are planning to rent the next year and talk to the people who are living in the apartment the current year. You can get a ton of great information out of those people. First of all, you want to ask whether or not that landlord, whether it's been a good experience. Do you like living here? What are the things that you wish you knew when you rented the place? Has the landlord been responsive to your maintenance requests? But the other thing that you can really get is valuable information about utilities, because utilities, your electric, your gas, your water, your sewer, your cable, internet, those are really kind of the variable costs that people don't really think about when they're trying to figure out how much it's going to cost for them to live off campus. And that information, your landlord can give you estimates, but really, if you talk to the people that are living there, they're probably going to give you a much better picture of what it is that you're going to have to pay in the upcoming year. So the next topic that we have written up here is a roommate contract. So your lease agreement is going to be an agreement between you and your landlord, okay? Your roommate will be a party to that agreement, but the enforceability really relates to you and your landlord. You can also sign what's called a roommate agreement, and there's a draft copy of one in the materials that I provided to you. And this is an agreement between you guys about the way that you want your relationship as a roommate to move forward. I get the question all the time, is this enforceable? Yes, it is. It's a contract. It's something that can be enforced against your roommate. I think some of the things that are the most important to put into a roommate agreement are, what is the breakdown of rent going to be? Who is going to put each utility in each person's name? And what the split is going to be with utilities. So if you're going to share the expense, if it's going to be 50-50, then put that into your roommate agreement. It makes it really clear what everybody's financial obligations are. In addition, I think that it's important to have timelines in there for payment. So lots of the landlords will require you to pay your rent in one check. Okay, so if one person is going to take on that responsibility, then I think it makes sense for it to be written into the roommate contract when payment is expected for the upcoming month's rent, so that has time to land in that person's account, and then they can make the payment to the landlord. I will tell you, in doing this job now for almost 3 years, I see so many roommate disputes that start out as something relatively minor that just snowball into bigger and bigger and bigger issues. And I think 9 times out of 10, if people had just sat down at the beginning of the tenancy and said, hey, look, these are the things that are really important to me, it probably wouldn't have been an issue. So if you know you have a particular sensitivity, for instance, if you know you don't want anyone's significant other to ever be spending the night in the house, that should go in a roommate agreement. If you know that you don't want anyone ever touching your food, that should go in a roommate agreement. Those are things that some people are okay with and some people aren't. But unless you talk about them beforehand, they can become issues along the way. The roommate agreement also allows you to kind of set forth what your expectations are with respect to just chores around the apartment and things like that. I know it sounds really trivial and silly, but again, these are the things where I see students getting into really big disputes with their roommates, where I'm thinking, man, if you guys would have just really talked about this, like the adults that you are beforehand, this probably wouldn't have been an issue. Okay, yeah, I think that was it.
Perfect. So my name is Mandy Schweitzer. I work on campus in the Student Wellness Center. So has anyone ever been to the RPAC to work out or anything like that? So that's where my office is located. And the Wellness Center does a lot of things. It talks about your wellness as a whole, emotionally, spiritually, physically, but we also include finances in that. So I work with financial wellness. And for us, we know that your finances and your money and how you feel about your money is connected to everything else. We also know that at Ohio State, students are very stressed about their finances. Has anyone ever felt stressed about money in any way? Yeah, it's normal. So for us, we're here for you. And I think something that you may be able to gather, and I hope you do, is that you don't have to do it alone here at Ohio State, because our offices are here for you, and we want to make this experience as enjoyable for you as possible. And so I'll talk a little bit about our services in a second. But wanted to talk about the concept of budgeting. So we have a 4-step process that we like to talk about, and we hope makes the idea of budgeting more reasonable. It's a great time now to get into practice before you perhaps have that full-time job and you have that income, to get in the practice of what budgeting really is, so you feel in control over your finances and not like your money is out of control and you have no idea what just happened the last month. So budgeting, our first step is actually identify your goals. So sometimes people are surprised that the first step isn't directly related to money, but we do this for 2 reasons. One is that if you create a budget that isn't in line with your goals, you're going to create something that probably doesn't work for you. So if you have a goal of wanting to go to graduate school, if you don't create a budget that lines up with that, then that's a significant thing to consider. And then the other reason we start with goals is because it makes you care about your budget more. So sometimes it's hard to stay motivated about a budget. But if you started with your goals and the things that you want and your dreams and even short-term fun things that you're looking forward to, and you see that your budget directly connects to that, then you're going to care more about your budget. So first start out with your goals. Just write them out. They can be long-term, they can be short-term. We will never judge your goals. Your goals can be whatever you want them to be, but start there first. Then the second step is to track your spending. So a lot of times when we say this step, students are like, right, every time I go buy food, I'm going to be like, wait, let me journal about this and track it. And while for some that may work, and if that works for you, that's great, I want to tell you about a tool out there. It's called mint.com. Has anyone heard of this website? So it's a website. There's also a phone app as well. And mint.com is completely free to use and completely secure to use. And what you can do is you can enter in your information and it'll track your spending for you. And then at the end of the month, it'll give you this nice little pie chart that shows, okay, you spent this much on groceries, this much on clothing, this much on eating out. So it tracks your spending, it categorizes it for you, and at the end of the month gives you a report. So that makes it a lot easier. It does all of the back-end work for you. So that's mint.com, and it does a lot of other things as well, but that's one thing it does. Third step is create a budget. So now that you know roughly the categories and how much you spend, try to set amounts for those categories. So try out an amount for groceries this month. Try out an amount that you're going to stick to for eating out. And you can actually set those amounts in mint.com. And then as you spend and it's tracking your spending, as you get close to your budget amount, it'll actually send you a text or an email to be like, hey, you're getting close to that budget, or you've hit your budget for eating out, stop. And it'll tell you and hold you accountable and do all the work for you. But like I said, if you're not using mint.com, sometimes a simple Excel sheet, some people prefer that as well. So try some amounts. And then the fourth step is really important, and that's to give yourself a little flexibility with this. So try out a budget, try out amounts, and then at the end of the month, adjust. So the first time you set amounts for yourself, it might not be perfect, and that's okay. That doesn't mean you should give up, you can't budget, you're done. It means that you took a first step and now we need to adjust a little bit. So it may take a few months to really figure out that sweet spot that works for you well, but once you figure it out, then you're set. So always revisit and adjust, and especially if you have a major life change, or if you suddenly move off campus, or if you suddenly have a new cost, a new significant cost, to revisit your budget and adjust it as necessary. But once you've created it, all you have to do is make little tweaks, so it's a lot easier. Oh, I'm sorry? Oh, mint.com? Yeah. Okay, yeah. Yeah, let me write that. It's just mint.com. Can everyone see that? So yeah, check it out. Totally free. Yeah. And then I want to talk about the services that we can offer you on campus. So we have some online services. So if you go to our website, hopefully you all got a card. One of these. This has a list of our services and also our website on there. If you didn't, let me know. We have more up here. All of these are free. Yeah. As many times as you want, as long as you're an Ohio State student. Once you graduate, though, we got to cut you off. But yeah, if you go on our website, we have some online resources. So if you're just like, I want to learn more about credit cards just on my own time, you can do an online module. Then we also do presentations. So if you have a student group, we can do a presentation for your student group. But then the last thing we do, which I really want to stress, is our one-on-one appointment service. So completely free to you, as many times as you want. You can sign up for a free one-on-one appointment. You do that on our website, go.osu.edu/yourfinances. Click online, you can just see the times that are available for you, and our appointments are held in the RPAC. So if you're going there anyways, why don't you go to a financial appointment, and then you get to meet with a coach. and you have 1 hour completely dedicated to you, your individual questions, your finances, your goals. And this service is something that after you graduate is usually something that you have to pay for. So my thought is, while you're here and while it's free, why not try it out? Give yourself that time for you to really think about your finances and your money. We can come up with a budget. We've helped people plan weddings. I mean, we can help you with a lot of different things. And we want to, and we want to meet you, and we want you to come in. So all you have to do to schedule is just go on the website, totally free as many times as you want.
Great. Okay, so next we're going to move on to scams, which was another area identified on our flyer to everyone. Scams can really kind of come up in a variety of situations. I mean, you can be approached online and, in the mail, some on the street. But I'm just going to tell you about some of the more frequent scams that we see students fall victim to here at Ohio State. The first is, and foremost probably, is an employment scam that is very, very common. So has anyone ever received an email offering them a job to work from home? Almost every person in here. That it is a scam. We see lots of students fall victim to it, but it's a situation where they tell you that you can work from home, they'll send you money, and then you have to order office supplies for them or do some sort of administrative tasks. But what happens is they send you a money order or a certified check that is extremely legitimate looking. And in fact, they almost always pass muster at the bank. And what happens is you go ahead and you deposit that in your bank account, and then you write a check to their suppliers or whoever they say you're supposed to writing a check to, and you're supposed to keep the $300 that you're going to get paid for doing these administrative tasks out of the $2,000 that they send you. So you write a legitimate check out of your bank account to send to wherever they are. They get that money, and then about 2 weeks later, you find out that that check that they sent to you was fraudulent. Okay, so I can't even tell you how legitimate these things look. I've seen probably 20 of them. I am amazed at how good these counterfeit money orders and checks are. A couple of words of caution. I mean, really, anytime you're getting, a job, unsolicited job offers where you're going to be working from home, it's a huge red flag. Okay, just right there. But then, if you do decide to if you do get approached in some other way and you think that maybe there's some legitimacy here, please feel free to come and see us, okay? Because we can help you out in navigating whether or not it would be something that is legitimate or not. The next area, and I think that this is probably an issue for any international student who would be going home over the summer, and if you're renting an apartment, if you're planning to sublease your apartment, the second probably biggest scam that we see on Ohio State's campus is a sublease scam. So if you post your apartment as available for a sublease, you might get an email from someone that says, hey, I'm interested in subleasing your apartment for the summer. How much, is the rent going to be? And you say, well, it's going to be $500 each month for 3 months, so for a total of $1,500. And you're able to move in May 15th, and you can stay until the end of July. And they'll say, great, no problem. I live in London. It's always London or Brazil for some reason. I live in London, and I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to send you the money, and we can finalize everything then. So they send you the money, and it's the same idea. They send you a check, except this time the check is for $2,500, even though you told them that the rent is only $1,500. And so again, they prey on how honest students are. And you say, hey, you sent me a check for $1,500. I told you, or $2,500. I told you it was only $1,500. And they say, oh, okay, well, why don't you just send me a check for the remaining $1,000? And so then you write the check, you send it off, and then you find out that the original check was fraudulent. And so what happens at that point is really you're out a lot of money, because the bank then takes that $1,000. I mean, it's gone. I mean, once you write that check and you send it out, I mean, they're not going to refund that money. That's not something that the bank is obligated to refund to you. And there is so little that we can do to catch these people. And so basically when students come in, it's like, all right, well, how do we mitigate your losses? How do we try and, budget so we can get around this situation? Because there's so little we can do to try and remedy it. So you really want to make sure that you're avoiding these issues, especially with the sublease situation. I think people are oftentimes desperate in those situations to try and find a workable situation. But the biggest red flags, in my opinion, are one, if the person who is coming is not already here. That doesn't mean that they're not 100% going to come as an Ohio State student, but that's something that you should have your guard up, okay? So you need to ask for additional information. So let's say this person says they are coming from London. Okay, well, I need a little bit more information. I want to see a copy of your student visa, that shows that you're planning to come and actually study here. Or, some other travel documents, show me, your flight information, or, something else that's going to give you some assurances that this person is legitimate, okay? Because otherwise you can really get yourself in a tough spot. And then door to door, so we talked a little bit about utilities. This isn't necessarily a scam, but I'm still gonna bring it up to you guys because I'm seeing so many students, and I actually haven't seen any international students fall victim to this, but I have seen a ton of domestic students fall victim to it. There are these companies now that go door to door to sell electrical services. Has anyone ever seen them? Okay, so they are legitimate companies and they will provide electrical services to you, but I think that their spiel is extremely misleading, okay? Because they say things to students like, well, AEP doesn't provide electrical services anymore, so you have to get a distributor of electrical services. Did they say that to you? See, I see someone nodding their head. So it's not really true, okay? If you contract with AEP, which is the general provider of electric here in Ohio, then AEP can also, it shops for its customers on the market to provide a pretty low rate, okay? So you have a choice. You can use one of these kind of third-party providers where you contract with them and they give you your electricity, but the problem is they usually give you a really low rate at the beginning and they say, oh, it's a fixed rate. But then in the fine print, it says it's a fixed rate for 6 months, and then after that, it's variable. And then people don't recognize it. They just forget about it and they're paying pretty good electric costs for a long time. And then all of a sudden they come and see me in the winter when their bills have gone from like $200 a month to like $600 a month. Wow. Yeah. And I'm like, have you contracted with one of these companies? And they're like, yes. So I mean, I don't really, it's not a scam, except they're very, very deceptive in the way that they present the information to students. Yeah, you have a question?
In that case, I did call them back to AP, and then they say, yes, I can choose other company to offer that service, and then trying to explain it and saying that the AP person talked to me, they're gonna, like certain year, they're gonna stop and service the AP, and then you definitely have to choose another company in order to pay for the.
But the default is just for them to provide the electrical services. And so you don't have to actually physically choose out of a list of providers. Yeah, and if you're having problems with that, definitely come and see us, okay? Because it's extremely misleading. But for instance, I had a student last week who, the market rate that AEP paid last month, if you just use their services, was 7.1 cents per kilowatt hour, and it was 12.9 cents with the company they were contracting for. And that's double. You're paying double the price for your electric services that someone standing next door is. I mean, that's just terrible. So you want to make sure that you understand what it is that you're signing. Those CRESs is what they're called. They can be a really good situation for someone who's super on top of their utilities and making sure they're checking the market rates every month and getting out of their contracts. But for most students, that's not realistic, So I get really worried about that one. Another on the street scam that we're seeing a lot more often. So, I don't know if this has happened to any of you, but people will approach Ohio State students on the street and they'll be like, hey, I'm going to study in Italy next year, and and they start soliciting money face to face. And it's very in your face, and it's very, off-putting if someone is kind of in your face and they're asking you for money. The first thing we want everyone to know is it's okay to say no. This is not, you can walk away from these people. They should not be harassing you and panhandling you for money. And it's completely culturally acceptable to walk away from these people and just say, I'm not interested, I don't want to talk to you. So don't feel trapped in a conversation with someone who does approach you on the street and tries to pander money from you, even if that person looks like an Ohio State student and they're trying to tell you that it's some legitimate service trip or something like that. It's okay to just say, I'm not really interested at this time, and just walk away. Okay, so because we are seeing that, and a lot of these people are not legitimate at all. Okay, I think I'm good. Okay, so consumer-related issues. This is kind of a lot of information in an hour. We're trying to get a lot of information in, but hopefully it'll kind of whet your appetite if you are interested, or if something is going on, you can come and talk to us about it further. You should know that generally there are consumer protection statutes here in Ohio, and I do a lot of consumer litigation, and so let's just say you do enter into some sort of a really deceptive purchase. So let's say you buy a car, okay? And you bought the car, and the person who sold it to you completely lied to you about the car's history, and we have proof of that. If there was something that happened in the context of a consumer transaction and it was fraudulent, please come and see us, okay? Because there are consumer protection statutes here in Ohio that really can assist the consumer, and they're very consumer friendly. So, not only can you get the money back that you paid for the car, but you might be able to get triple the amount that you paid. So they're very powerful, but we can at least walk you through what options are available to you as kind of somebody who is taken advantage of under Ohio law. Some of the things that I see, routinely with international students, first of all, paying cash for expensive items. That has been a problem in the past. If you are planning to buy something that is significant, you want to make sure that there is some sort of a record of the transaction, okay? So if that person is going to accept payment from you, you would want to get something from that person to evidence the transaction. If you are going to pay in cash, then you need to demand a receipt, a signed receipt by the person who is taking the money from you to evidence that they took that money from you, okay? Getting a receipt for expensive items, that kind of is the same issue. Checking your bank statement for fraudulent transactions. I have seen several students who have gotten to situations where they have had ATM cards that they don't use. Maybe a parent has a bank account that's there for emergency situations or things like that. And they just had it in their bedroom, and then they didn't realize that this bank account was being used for withdrawals from the account and things like that. You need to be really vigilant about your bank statements just to make sure that all of the deductions that are being taken are things that are legitimate. Most websites these days are relatively secure with transactions, but it's still possible that you share your account information and then that there could be problems that arise. If for some reason you think that you have been the victim of identity theft, that's definitely an issue to come see us about, okay, because we can help you with that. We can help you in starting to repair your credit, and then also making sure that you're not going to actually have to pay for a lot of these fraudulent charges if somebody uses your credit card or something like that while you're here. So we talked about security. And then if you have a Social Security number, so if you do apply for a Social Security number while you are enrolled here, then you want to make sure that you don't carry your Social Security card with you everywhere that you go. Okay, it's just very easy to take a wallet, and that's really important information. And so it's treat it like your passport. I'm sure you don't take your passport everywhere you go. Just make sure that it's in a really safe place. And that you only take it out when it's necessary. It's not something that should be carried around like your license, okay? Okay, so employment. We talked a little bit about this employment-related scam earlier. I think that a lot of people fall victim to it because of the restrictions on their ability to work as a student. But generally, most international students are restricted from earning income if you're here on an F1 visa. If you do have work privileges, then those would be, specific to you. But the biggest issues that I see international students for in this respect are people who are interested in starting a business while they're here. So that could be a consultation in and of itself. So please feel free to come and see us. But generally, there are ways to do it. There are ways to set up a business so that you're not actually earning any sort of remuneration or income while you're living here. It's just really important that you do it properly so that you're not actually earning any income while you're here, because that could impact your status. So you want to make sure that that does not happen. But otherwise, if you have, if you do have those visa restrictions, just understand that if you take a job, if you take something under the table or anything like that, and the federal government catches wind of it, that can be a big problem for you. Okay. Scams. We talked about easy money and bad checks. Those relate to those earlier cases that I talked about. Those employment-related issues. Okay. Does anyone have any employment issues or legal issues that they have questions about? I guess the only other legal issue that I think it's important for international students to know as you start looking for jobs is that you should understand that here, there are a wide array of protections that are provided to employees that protect you against any sort of discrimination, either in your gender or your race. If you ever believe that you are a victim of any of that, then I would encourage you to understand that you would very likely have protections, okay? Okay, health insurance. This is something that we kind of added in at the last minute, and the reason is I see a lot of international students with questions about health insurance and billing information, so I just thought maybe I could give a little bit of information before we kind of close up and you guys can ask any questions that you might have. As a student, you know this already, but you're required to have OSU health insurance. Before you go visit your provider, if you're getting services here on campus or at Wills, then it's very likely that it's going to be covered by your student health insurance. If you are seeing someone off campus, it's very, very wise to call them beforehand to make sure that they're going to accept your insurance. You have very, very comprehensive health insurance, so you probably won't have too many problems. But in the event you are seeking out any sort of mental health services, most of those providers these days are really funky about insurance. Some of them don't take it at all. So you should never go see a doctor or a mental health provider without calling just to make sure that those services would be covered by the insurance that you have. That little card that they give you, excuse me, is important. So that is one thing that you do want to keep with you at all times, okay? So if you're ever involved in an accident or anything like that, they're going to go through your wallet, and they're going to look for your insurance information, and it's a good idea to have it on you at all times so that you can have it in the event you have any sort of a problem. Where do you go for health services? We talked a little bit about Wills. That's the clinic here on campus. If you go there, it's completely free. So you don't have to pay any sort of a copay or anything like that, which is great. You can get a lot of just general services. If you're not feeling well, you have kind of like strep throat or something where it's not life or death, but you're just not feeling great, that's a great option that's available to you. That's not available for all range of issues. So obviously we have the Med Center here, and it's fantastic, and we have a ton of resources here, but you should know that medical services are not confined completely to this area. Columbus has a lot of great health systems and providers in this area, and so you shouldn't feel restricted in your choosing a provider by just saying you have to go to a services here on campus, okay? At your visit, you want to make sure that you take all of that information about your insurance, also any relevant health history. So if you have seen a doctor, for this issue in the past, you want to make sure that you try and take any records that you may have, or just relevant information about what is going on with you. So the doctor is going to ask you a ton of information about what's going on with you and your history and things like that. And so you want to make sure that you have that because, it can be challenging if you are trying to also translate and then try and think about all of that information at the same time. It might be a good idea to kind of write all of that information down so you have it while you're there. So after your visit, the biggest issue that I wanted to talk about today is billing. So first of all, if you ever have a major health issue while you're here and you have billing-related medical issues, please do not feel silly. Please. It is so complicated, and I see students all the time, domestic students who have been dealing with health insurance their whole lives. They have no idea what to do when they receive these various bills. Feel free to come and make an appointment with me if you have any questions. But you will receive something from Aetna that says explanation of benefits. That is not a bill. It will say on there, this is not a bill. But all the time I have people bringing them in and they're like, I don't know what I need to do with this. You don't need to do anything with that. You can take a look at it and see what it says, but what's going to be most important is on that explanation of benefits, it will say your responsibility. So on that, it will say, this is how much money you have to pay for these medical services that you provided, okay? That number should match up with the number that you get in the bill from your doctor. So that doctor's bill will probably come in the next month or so. So what's a good idea to do is hold on to the EOB, shelve it away. Lots of times you get that information before you get it from the doctor's office. And then once you get your bill from your doctor's office, make sure that everything lines up, okay? And if it does, and it looks like you don't have any major questions or anything like that, then you just go ahead and pay the doctor's office directly. They will have like a little remittance there, and you pay them directly for the services that you provided, okay? The biggest confusion that I see are issues relating to co-payments. So, if you go to receive certain services, like if you go to an urgent care off campus, or if you go to just like a regular primary care doctor, if you don't go to Wills, then oftentimes you have to pay a copay, and I'm not sure what your copays are, but usually they're like $25 or $30. 15? Okay. Yeah, so $15. So it's not a ton of money, but that is legitimate. If a provider is saying, if you go to a primary care doctor up in Clintonville or something and they say, yeah, you've got to pay us $15, that is acceptable. That's something that they're allowed to charge you. And then the other issue is that, sometimes you have to pay a deductible, and that is where things get really confusing. So say you have to do something like an MRI while you're here, or something that's a little bit more intense, there is a possibility that you might have to pay a good amount of money. I mean, even though you have comprehensive health insurance, I'm not sure what the individual deductible is, but like for my health insurance, it's $1,000. So every year I have to pay $1,000 before they're gonna cover all of the rest of my health-related expenses. And so I get a lot of confusion with students because sometimes they'll come in and they'll say, I don't understand why I have this bill for $300. I have health insurance. I'm like, well, yeah, except you have these kind of minimum amounts that you have to pay before a portion of that coverage is going to kick in. Student health insurance, the office is amazing. They're really helpful. And so if you do have any specific questions about your coverage, you should certainly go see them. But again, I am perfectly happy willing to sit down with anyone and go through their bills if they have any sort of questions about whether or not they're getting legitimate charges.
Excuse me, I have a question about the insurance card. I'm confused. Why do we have to keep the card with that? Can they just pull out our information, track the number or our names?
It depends. So if you've never seen that provider in the past, no. So we're moving to an electronic health record, and I think the idea is that someday all of this information is going to be contained in a centralized repository of information, and everybody's going to know what everybody's doctor said. But we are far from that ever, actually being achieved. And so, today, if you've never been in an OSU health system, then they got to have that information. And then after that, then they might be able to pull up your information. Let's say you went to Wills and then you go to the med center. And I'm not sure whether or not those paths cross, but they might. It's possible that they'll have your insurance information. But even, for my doctor that I've been going to for 20 years, every time I come, they want to make sure that my insurance is still legitimate. And so it's just a really good idea to have it with you. They're always going to ask you for it. Okay, and if you're not good at carrying your wallet, then take a picture of it on your phone, and then you always have a copy of it with you. Okay. Any other questions?
I have a question
Yep.
about the apartment. Actually, it's about myself. A few years ago, I used the same landlord, but changed from 1 bedroom to 2 bedroom. But I feel they charged me like $300 for repair the kitchen.
Okay.
So they thought that I put too much water and they have to replace
Okay.
something. And it has been like 2 years ago
Okay.
since it happened. So can I try to claim the money back?
Potentially.
Since it's 2 years.
Yeah, so statute of limitations for any sort of breach of contract in Ohio is 6 years if it's written agreement. So yeah, so you've got plenty of time. But just generally, the question of whether or not you're responsible for damage to your apartment comes down to how the damage occurred, okay? So if the damage occurred, first of all, it has to be beyond normal wear and tear before they can charge you. So let's just say that there is a little bit of water damage to the outside of a really crappy countertop that, there was nothing you could do about it because the sink leaked or something like that.
Probably the water soaked into the desk, the top, and they have to replace it with the new wood materials.
Okay.
But since I have lived there for 3 years, I think it's reasonable for the water to leak because it's already 3 years.
Right. Yeah, and so the question would be whether or not you were negligent in that allowing that damage to occur. So first question is whether or not it rises to wear and tear, beyond normal wear and tear, and second of all, whether or not you were responsible for the damage occurring. Okay, so if the landlord found, for instance, that you knew that this leak was there and you didn't inform them about it, then they might have a legitimate claim to the $300. Okay.
If I try to do that, but since they already replaced all those, can the mistake still be identified?
Yeah, so typically, did they take it out of your security deposit? Yeah, so usually that's when I enter into fights with landlords, is when they take money out of students' security deposits, and so I'll represent the student and negotiate on their behalf and try and come up with some sort of an agreed settlement, and if not, then we sue them.
Since I try to stay with the landlord, I don't want to make a bad relationship with it, so I didn't say anything.
Yeah, well, and we see that a lot. I think a lot of people don't enjoy being involved in disputes, right? Like, I don't even enjoy it, and I do this for a living, But this is, let us do that for you. That is my job, is to get involved in disputes on your behalf. And it's funny because in my personal life, I'll walk away from issues all the time. But then when I'm working for students, I, fight tooth and nail over the craziest things. But that's what a lawyer is here for. You don't want to handle those awkward conversations. You don't want to handle the negotiations with your landlord. You don't like dealing with the condescending property manager that works in your apartment building. Totally fine. Let us do it for you.
So what I need to do is to make an appointment and bring the letter and the lease.
Yep. So you can call our offices. So our information is right there. We also have a website. So if you just Google Student Legal Services OSU, you can find us very easily online. I think it's best to call us to make an appointment the first time that you come and meet us, because I don't think our online scheduler is that great. We're going to hopefully fix that, but for the time being, I think it's probably best to call if you want to make an appointment, or if you ever have any questions about whether or not you're eligible for our services or whether or not it's something that we can help you with, then please just feel free to give us a call. In terms of eligibility, you should be aware that if you paid the student legal services fee at the beginning of your first term of enrollment, which would have been fall 2014 this year, then you're eligible for our services until July 31st of 2015. There is no additional cost for our services. So that's it. You paid your $40. You can come see us a million times if you want to. There's no restriction on the amount of times that you're able to come and see us. So feel free. Okay. Does anyone have any questions?
I have one.
Okay.
If I graduate, say, this summer, but my landlord may keep asking me for some money to repair the new apartment. But so can I still ask you, since I I will be graduating if
You-
if the issue is still there.
Yeah, as long as you come and see us before July 31st, 2015,
So
then
the
it
case
should be
remain.
fine. Yeah, the case can remain as long as we have a legitimate issue open for you. So if the lawyer meets with you and says, yes, there's a need to open a case for you, then we don't drop people from our services.
Even if I'm not a student anymore.
Yeah. We have discretion, as to whether or not it's taking up too much time. It's a resource issue, really, because we are very, very, very busy in the fall. But I would encourage you guys, thanks for coming today. And, next Tuesday, we are doing a presentation on driving. So specifically, if you have questions about car insurance or buying a car or driving with a license here, legally, then come armed with those questions. It'll be same place, same time. And then the week after that, we're doing a presentation on public safety and safety-related issues. And so, we hope to see you there. And please bring your friends. If anyone has any questions, I'll be here, so.